Hello everybody and welcome to the build of the Beaver floats. I have been loving the Beaver so much, it's been such a fun plane, and I think the only thing that can make it better is to get it in the water, get it wet, and use some floats with it. So I should have bought these floats to begin with. The first thing you see me doing here is cutting out all those fiberglass G10 pieces, and then I'm going to masking tape them up, and then I'm going to spray paint them. I want them to be black because I don't like that yellow color sticking out. Next we start assembling the connecting rods. And we make these using the carbon fiber rods and clevis ends. They give nice measurements in the manual, and I find that if you trim them and then just use some sandpaper to get them right to their final length, I found that to be way easier. I also sand the last 1/4 inch of the rods to make sure that they adhere well when you glue them in place. You'll see I'm using this piece of metal. I put that between the ears of the clevis pin and use that to kind of twist it and get it aligned in the correct orientation. The two shorter connecting rods are going to be 90 degrees from each other, and the longer one is lined up straight. Once all these measurements are dead on, then I'm going to go ahead and glue them with some CA glue. Just a drop on each clevis end is enough to hold them in place. And as always, I've got some parchment paper underneath my work area when I'm doing gluing, because you don't want to end up gluing those to the table. Next, we're working on our bulkheads. I'm going to sand up each of those. You'll see I did paint those a little because I just didn't want that yellow color sticking out. I'm really glad that I did. They look nice. So I get those all trimmed up and sanded down, and then I scuff up each of the edges in order to get them ready to install. I started on the inboard bulkheads. They're the ones with the little hole, and I just glued those in place, and then I left the outboard ones free because I wanted to be able to locate those with the plane and be able so that alignment wasn't going to be an issue. So then I installed the long connecting rod and then onto the shorter connecting rods as well. Then I grabbed my plane, took off the wheels, and then we're going to install the rear mounts onto the plane, and there's a little divot on the plane that marks where those go. So I measured, but there's also a measurement there. On these two mounts, I wish I would have made those fully black because the yellow sort of shows through the EPP a little bit. But once I got those glued in place, then I used my pin vise to open up the holes in the bulkheads just a little bit and then sand down the gear so that they were able to slip through. Once the front gear was through, then I put the pins in on the rear mounts, and then I glued in the outer bulkheads. I wanted to do those last because that way I wasn't going to glue them out of alignment. And finally we put the collets on the ends, and that is the end of the Beaver float build. I wanted to include a few shots of the floats in action, getting the Beaver wet on the water, and I wasn't sure how it was going to fly, how much of a difference the floats were going to make. I think it flies better with them. It feels really well balanced. I didn't have to change my CG at all. I am running 3S batteries, and I would recommend putting some Corrosion X on your receiver and your other electronics, although it does tend to stay pretty dry so long as you land on the floats. The floats do have an option to be able to take them off and replace them back with the wheels, but after having them on here, I don't think I'm ever going to take these floats off. I think before I took them off, I'd rather get another Beaver, because what's better than a Beaver? Two Beavers.